Welcome back to another edition of Hames Hot Mic. This is a series where we look at local issues and we talk to the people who have influence in how those issues get resolved. I've called it Hames Hot Mic as an homage to all the people who have ever been caught on a hot mic, but I hope that the people who appear on this program will feel so comfortable, they'll feel like there aren't cameras or mics around. When we come back from a short break, my guest will be another school board candidate in the Chilliwack School Board by-election. His name is Brian VanGarderen, and we'll be back after this break. Welcome back, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Brian VanGarderen. And Brian is seeking your support for a run at a seat on the local Chilliwack School Board of Trustees. Welcome, Brian. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I wonder if you wouldn't mind starting by telling folks a little bit about yourself.
Sure. My name is Brian VanGarderen. I currently work in the Abbotsford School District as a teacher, for a hearing resource teacher. And I've worked, this is my 7th year of teaching, and I live in Chilliwack in Greendale right now. And I'm not sure what else to put on there, just because people want to know who I am, but we'll get to the policies later, and I think that's what's going to speak most about who I am and why I'm running.
Yeah. Now, lots of folks, when it comes to someone running for school board, want to know, have you got kids? Have you got kids in the school system? Because that's a real trigger for some folks in running, is that they want to see something good happen for their kids, or they want to make sure that a system is in really good shape when their kids get there.
Right. And I'm happy to say that in March of 2020, I had my first child, and her name is Victoria. She was born in the Abbotsford Hospital, and now I've been starting to think about, well, how can I be more involved in my community, and especially in the education system? And so she was really a big drive for that. But I also have to say that I couldn't do any of this if it wasn't for my wife. Like, she has to be behind me and willing to support me, and she's going to be put under the microscope as well. And so I just wanted to make sure that she was recognized for all of her support. And my kids will be going through Greendale Elementary and then Vetter Middle School and Sardis High School. And so, yeah, I want to be involved. I want to make sure that I can further benefit not only for my kids, but other kids as well.
That's great. I have nothing but admiration for people who choose to get involved in public service, especially public service where you actually have to be voted in, because it's not an easy process. It's not easy on you. It's never easy on your family, and I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
So I'm trying to be a little bit delicate when I ask questions like this, but I don't think it's any secret that our local school board has been in the news, let's say, for all the wrong reasons, for what people would say is a long time and perhaps far too long. I think on the positive side, what that's done is driven out a number of really good people to put their name forward to be on the school board. But I'd like to know why you're running for school board at this time. What, besides, you kids and all of that, is there anything about the operation of the current board that's been a motivating factor for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think many of the candidates that are running right now, they've come out of the woodwork, as to say, because of some of the things that are in the news. Like, we have a candidate who's been outspoken against the SOGI curriculum and also against the inclusivity of all students. And that's not acceptable when it comes to a public education. Public education is supposed to be for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, where you come from, what your background is. It's supposed to be for your kids to become better, to become productive members of the community and a part of our society. And so if we don't give every kid that opportunity and a place to feel safe and a place to feel welcome and able to share who they are independently and also their individuality, that just means that we're not providing what's best for them. And so the reason why I'm running is because we don't have that right now. I believe that there are certain aspects of our education and our school board and our policies that are good, but they could be better. Like when you look through some of the policies that are in place right now, some of them haven't been reviewed since the 90s. And so you're wondering how outdated are they and do they need to be reviewed? So that is something that I want to be a part of. And I also want to be at the forefront of making sure that our kids have the best education possible and not being set aside because of any type of difference, whether that be an exceptionality or whether that be being a part of the LGBTQ community or even our Indigenous population too, that we need to make sure that they have what they need when they go through education.
That's a great and expansive answer, and you've gotten into some of the questions that I wanted to chat with you about. One of the things I would say, you had used the word, there are candidates that have expressed that opinion, and I think what you meant to say is there are existing school board members that have expressed that opinion.
Yes.
I'm not aware of a candidate that's expressed that opinion.
Sorry, my apologies.
No, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that was clarified. I'm sure that was what you meant.
Right.
What you talked about a lot about policies that you say haven't been reviewed in a long time. Give me an example of a policy that you've looked at and you said, wow, why haven't we done something with that in this amount of time?
Yeah, so one of my major things is about inclusion for the school board and for education. And we have policies about the special needs area and about kids with exceptionalities. And it's very vague in general because at the time inclusion was just introduced and kind of a priority for the BC education. So when we're pushing for something that is meaningful for all of our students, especially in the local community schools, well, how do we support that and provide opportunities for teachers to improve their fundamental philosophies to be able to provide the education that they deserve? And so I can't remember specifically which policy it is, but the one other piece I want to address is that there isn't actually a policy on inclusion, just defining what inclusion is. So if you look on a few other district websites, they have a definition of what inclusion is and what it means to be in that district and how the district will support, and they define kids with exceptionalities, whether it's physical or whether it's a mental. And so I think that as a district, we need to be very clear of how we're going to support these vulnerable students.
One of the candidates had expressed that they felt one of the areas the school district had let people down was in the notion of gifted students, and they were suggesting that we don't do enough, the school board doesn't do enough to recognize the needs of gifted students. How do you feel about that as a juxtaposition to what you've just said about kids that might require additional supports because of a lack of capacity rather than kids that require support that have let's say, an excess capacity?
For sure. The biggest thing, or one of my biggest things that I believe, is that we can provide to a certain point what's needed at your local and community school. And that includes our kids that have that are gifted. So they're students that need to be academically pushed and engaged and go above and beyond. And so as a school, how can we support our teachers and our staff to be able to provide that? And that's critically important for inclusion, because you want to make sure that those students that are gifted have the academic stimulation, but we also want to make sure that those kids are having those leadership opportunities and being able to provide that mentorship role, as well as being able to have that stimulation. And so whether it's having a program for a gifted student, I'm not sure that I'm behind that, but what I am behind is providing potentially opportunities that are extracurricular for those gifted kids to meet, because then they can intellectually challenge each other. And so it's kind of a combination of twofold, right? So I want to make sure that our schools are well equipped to be able to handle almost every type of situation and student that comes in, but I also want to make sure that we're providing that piece of intellectual challenging and thought with each other as well.
Thank you. Now listen, one of the other things that comes up often with school districts is I would think everybody would agree that school boards would love to have more money than they currently have. I think it's an issue that seems to be there's never enough money for healthcare, and there never seems to be enough money for education. So some folks have suggested perhaps it's time to look at private investment in our school system so that we go out and we fundraise. And there's certainly two schools of thought. One that says you don't want that influence in a school. You don't need that kind of corporate influence in a school. And if education is important, we should be funding it through our tax dollars. Another side of that is that people say, well, there's people out there who actually would like to help and maybe do it in a way that isn't trying to influence policy. Okay. So what are your thoughts on that, the allowing of fundraising, so say corporate fundraising in schools?
Well, I think it's a slippery slope, right? So as soon as you allow private investments into schools, there's all of a sudden we get into a situation where they could have a difference of opinion or a different philosophy of what they think is important to do with their money. And so in that case, they're going to be influencing on which programs they want to sponsor. And I know that happens already, but as a public education, it's important for our community to know that our taxes go towards everybody. And so I know that can be controversial because you have kids that come from very affluent families and they come from a lot of wealth and they feel like they're not getting the same type of benefit of the education system. But you also have communities and you have kids that come from low income, single family, and they rely on the school system for everything. You're talking about counseling. We're talking about a safe place. We're talking about food in some cases. And so if we were to start asking for private businesses, I mean, we would have our better off areas in Chilliwack having more money, like our Sardis schools and our G.W. Graham schools might have more private investment, but then you'd have schools that have less socioeconomic status that don't have that same opportunity. So where does the equity fit in within there? And that's what's important to me, is the equity that all students have the same opportunity, and school system is a huge part of that.
Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about the board itself. What experience are you bringing to the table in terms of governance? There's a big difference in being a teacher who's operationalizing policy, which you do in the Abbotsford School District, but governance of a system like a school system is a different animal. What experience are you bringing to the table in the form of governance so that you can walk into that job and understand the role and know how to develop policy as opposed to implement policy?
Right. And this is one area that I feel that I don't have the same type of experience and strength in. And not to say that because I don't know what's going on in the education, just to say that I haven't been involved in any type of policy making or being in that governance position. But throughout my career, I've had my exposures and experiences in the classroom as a support teacher level and then as a district level. And so right now in my current role, I go to 14 schools a week. And so I can see what goes on in the high schools, elementary and middle schools. And so it's a very valuable experience because I hear from support staff, I hear from teachers, I hear from administrators, and I hear from the parents. And so you really get a picture of how each part of an education and a district fit together. So you have your learning support services, you have your curriculum, you have your superintendent, and you have all of those academies and sports. And so how they all work together is very important. And so being able to understand all the pieces is crucial, especially when you're going to be doing governance decisions, because you need to make sure, or I need to make sure, that I have all of the pieces and how it'll affect each and every one, which decisions I make.
Thanks. Brian, we're going to take a short break and we're going to be back in just a couple of minutes. I'd like to, at that time, start talking about some of the more specific issues in the Chilliwack School District. So we're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm here with Brian VanGarderen, and Brian has put his name forward to sit on our school board in Chilliwack. We're thankful there's lots of good people like Brian that are coming forward to compete for that seat. Listen, Brian, the Chilliwack School Board and Chilliwack School District has done a lot of really good things, I think, in the last while, despite some of the challenges at the board level. One of the more interesting projects that they have on the go right now is called Imagine High. Are you familiar with it? Can you give me some of your thoughts?
I'm not as familiar that I would like to be with it. And the thing that I've recently noticed is that it's going to be an alternate program, integrated arts program. And so I think having those programs and opportunities for kids is valuable and important, but I caution about these things because sometimes what happens is parents will want to go for those schools because they believe it's not as bad or they have better kids that go there. And so I'm cautious about it, but I also think that these are skills and wants and desires of students, and so it is important to have as well.
Yeah, it's an arts and technology program that appears that it's going to integrate arts and technology for students in a more of a project-based learning environment, which I think is pretty exciting for a school like that. And it will have facilities that are second to none. So it's taking a bit of a departure from the way kids typically learn in rows in classrooms and building their knowledge base around projects that would incorporate aspects of the arts, aspects of technology, science, all of the curriculum areas, but build it around projects that are more creative, I think. So I'm quite looking forward to how that turns out. It'd probably be a school I went to. A couple of our candidates have talked about their belief that we really need to have a focus on some of the fundamentals, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, as examples. What's your feeling on the curriculum and the breadth of offering within the curriculum and where we should be spending our time?
I think this is where I'm going to stand out above a few of the other candidates, and not because I don't believe that those things are important, but I do think that our universities and our BC curriculum are great at training teachers to deliver that content. And so making sure that kids have that quality of information and knowledge as they go through their grades. But I think one of the things that we're lacking is how do we make sure that those pieces of education and subjects that are being delivered to all students, how do we target those vulnerable kids? And I am a big supporter about those kids that we have mental health issues, that have exceptionalities, and teachers feel overwhelmed because they're not sure what to do or how to bring the curriculum to those kids. And so while I do think that every one of those subjects are important and that having focus in them and having those opportunities for different sciences and math and extracurriculars connected to them to help grow that interest in those subjects, I think it's really valuable for us to get those teachers and offer those teachers resources and opportunities to become stronger at giving content to our vulnerable kids, because they disappear so fast, and then we have those kids that are walking around the streets or that are getting into trouble, that are going into our jail system. So how do we re-engage them? But we also have to make sure that our teachers and our school system are equipped to be able to bring that content to the kids.
So that sounds like what you're saying. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like what you're saying is that there are two options to look at. You can either segregate out groups of people with certain needs and specialize in delivering education based on those needs, or give more skills to our teachers so that they can teach a diverse population within their classes, so that the kids get the benefit of that inclusion and integration. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's a part of what I'm saying. I know there are a ton of teachers out there that have the skills and that do amazing work out there with all types of kids. And I just want to make sure that we have the capacity as an entire district to be able to service all of our kids. And so that means making sure that our principals and our support staff, they're well aware of how we can fit and work together to make sure that those kids are engaged for us. And so I also think that your academic courses, like your advanced sciences, are important for those kids that need to be stimulated as well. So it's not a black and white. It is very much a, how can we make sure that all of our kids get a good education, and our vulnerable population? And that also includes our students that are marginalized, discriminated against, or have bullying involved, and so in their lives or even at school. And so how do we make sure that we keep those kids in our system rather than letting them go away or disappear out of the classrooms?
Okay, I want to change gears just a little bit here. We've got not too much time left, but I want to change to our most recent dilemma as a community, as a province, as a country, as a world, and that's COVID-19. How do you think the school district in Chilliwack is coping with its COVID-19 preparations and solutions that it's put in place?
I think there's always opportunities to do more and make sure that there's safety in each school, especially with the contact tracing and making sure that there's proper supervision for our kids before, after, and during lunch times. And it's important for us to make sure that when policies are put in place by our health minister, that we follow them and make sure that every school has clear procedures that keeps everyone safe. Because as soon as one or two people could give it to other students, then you have a larger problem at hand, and you don't want to shut down a school again. And so we want to make sure that they remain open, but that means we have to make sure that policies and procedures are very clear in the system.
So the school district, and you know this from working in the system, the revenue that a school district receives comes from the province, and that revenue is about 95% spoken for by the time it hits the school district, in teacher salaries, in support staff salaries, in buses and buildings and all of those other things. So there's very little discretionary spending that's involved in a school district. Of the little bit that's there, where do you think Chilliwack School District should be putting a priority for any extra resources they have?
Well, that's a tough question. I mean, as soon as you say that it's going to go towards one department, you're going to have teachers and parents up in arms. And so it depends on the needs of the school. And so the equity piece comes into play. And I feel that I can't say where I would put the extra money because I don't know what each school is needing. And so right now, what I do know is that our schools need to be able to provide opportunities for students, and especially our vulnerable students and our LGBTQ community, to get together and have opportunities to build a community and to make connections and make meaningful relationships.
So is there anything that I haven't asked you that you had kind of prepared for and you thought, boy, I hope he asked me this, because this is a question I really will give people an understanding of how passionate I am, what I understand about something. Have I missed something?
No, I don't think so. But the one thing I do want to address is that there's been a few comments out there of why an Abbotsford teacher is running for school district. And I want to be very clear that I work in Abbotsford School District, but I live in Chilliwack. And so what I want to do is I want to be a part of my community and help further develop the education system. And I am a part of the community right now by volunteering for the Pacific Autism Center in Chilliwack that just recently opened up. And I've also am a coach for this Chilliwack Stingray. So I am involved with youth at the community level. And I'm also looking for other opportunities through the Chilliwack Community Society to get involved as well.
Now, I think I've creep to everybody's Facebook page that's running, and I've been impressed with the everyone that's running right now. The four of you are all people that are involved in this community, and yeah, you make your living out of town, and I hope that doesn't put too much of a strain on your on you for doing that. But we all know that happens. That happens. So if there's somebody that's complaining about that, we do what we have to support our families.
Right.
Brian, thank you so much for taking some time with us. I feel like you've exposed yourself to the community in a very good way. Your answers certainly reflect a passion and an understanding of the school system. I wish you a lot of luck as you go forward in this part of your life. I know that I've got a lot of experience in campaigning and being involved in local government, and I know it's not easy on you or your family. So best of luck, and thanks so much for taking some time to be with us today.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks very much, Brian. That's all the time we have for today. But before I go, I wanted to make sure the audience had an investment in this show. If you had ideas on who you'd like to see on the show or questions you'd like me to ask them, drop us a line at news@chilltv.ca. That's all for this program. We'll see you next time on Hames Hot Mic.
Thank you.